when I got into education, I never once thought I'm going to get rich doing this. Excuse me. But it just seems that teachers know that, still go into it for the passion. And we see a ton of teachers leaving because it just seems like the passion's beat out of them.
Hey, how you doing, everybody? Welcome back to the Another Nobody Show with me, your favorite nobody, Travis Myers. Today I'm sitting with my friend Sam Sprunger, who many of you may know from the 500 Section Lounge podcast. Now, my friend Sam also happens to be a school teacher. All right, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Today we're going to talk about education here in America. We talk a little bit about schools, the Department of Education. Um, you know, I don't think we're going to solve many problems because there's a lot of problems to solve. But let's not listen to me. Let's talk to Sam. Hey, Sam, how you doing?
I am doing well, Travis. Thanks for having me on.
Well, gosh, it's so good to see you again. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has.
Like as I told my listeners here, I've been on your show, geez, 4 or 5 times, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
You
I
know,
think 4 different occasions, but 5 different episodes was probably what the
is
best way
that
to
what it
put it,
was?
because we sat down for 2 hours on the 9/11 special that we had.
Correct,
Yeah,
correct. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, that was a
yeah,
long one.
yeah. One of my favorite, and my mom recently passed, well, last September, and she always listened to it every September. I think there were a couple of September 11th, because she actually passed on September 11th.
Oh my goodness, I'm
But
sorry.
um, she loved that episode. So kudos to you on how you told the story.
Oh well, thank you,
Yeah,
thank you. Thanks for having me on again.
yeah, no problem.
Today, unfortunately, we're well, not unfortunately. 9/11 was a terrible thing to talk about,
Yes,
but
yeah,
we're gonna talk about, I guess, should we say, the state of our education system today, and really as a
the
I-
grade card,
what's that?
the grade card
The
of
grade card.
education.
There you go. And I wanted to talk to an actual in the trenches school teacher who, to get your point of view, because there's so many so-called experts out there and politicians and academics who will like to throw numbers around, but they're not, like I say, in the trenches, you
Right.
know? And so I just kind of wanted to get some feedback off you. I was shocked at some of the numbers I was recently reading, that how since what was it, 1979, I believe the Board of Education was formed. It didn't actually take place until 1980, but it was formed in 1979 by our president, Jimmy Carter. And every year since then, the sadly, education has taken a step back year after year,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And it's a little bit heartbreaking. I was truly shocked to know that we had gone from once leading the world, literally being number one in the world in education, and now, depending on what website you look at or who you look up, we're anywhere from like 22, 23 in the world to as bad as number 36 in the world, which is shocking to me. So if you were to put those together, that still puts us at like, you know, number 25, 26, when we used to be number one, just whatever that was.
It's a dramatic drop in 45 years,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
because it was formed in 1979, which is the year I was born. So therefore, it is as old as I am, basically. And for education, our value and how we test and everything worldwide, to drop that dramatically, um, almost to me says that maybe it wasn't a good thing that the Federal Department of Education was formed. I Because what does that do? We've got to jump through these hoops to get the money,
Yes.
and if we don't
Yes.
align to it, then we don't get that money. And then you also look at, but these states, some of these standards that are put across by the federal uh, Department of Education don't pertain to a lot of these states,
Well,
and things like that, to where it seems like you're educating on the wrong facets of humans in those areas. you know?
Yes, yes. I think I know exactly what you're saying. And I can also see, because this happens with government, I mean, with so many other topics too, where quite often the most populated states and the most populated cities are going to get the most money
Yep.
simply because they have the most votes.
Yes.
Yes, you agree with that.
Yeah, I
So
do.
now you were a teacher in Indiana and Ohio, correct?
I've never held a license in Ohio, but I live in Ohio, but I teach kids.
Okay.
The
Okay.
company I work for now, I teach for various states. So I've got students that I teach in Indiana and other states, but not in Ohio. But I've taught then also in schools in Indiana.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I knew there was a two-state thing there
Yeah.
with you. I just
Yep.
didn't know what it was.
Yep.
All right. So yeah, again, that was shocking to me. And do you think, again, that so much of it is just I don't know, the debacle of going through the federal red tape?
uh, the famous Ronald Reagan statement, "I'm from the government." The nine most scary words ever, or the nine
Yes.
worst words. I'm from the government, and I'm here to help.
Correct.
You know, the government's designed, and I'm a history teacher, so I don't know it all, but I have a pretty strong basis of what the government was designed to be. Our government wasn't designed to be oversteppers. They were put in place because the people in the states voted those people there. There was never supposed to be career politicians.
Yes.
You know, basically they do a few terms and they get back to the fields. That was the thought, back home to the fields. They weren't career politicians. Now you have these politicians putting in people into the Department of Education that don't know. Were they a teacher? Sure, maybe, but they've been away from teaching for so long that they've lost touch with them. So I think the states should have that power to decide how education goes because they know their people better.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sure every state and also every municipality within
Hmm.
that state would be able to manage much better. And of course, then whenever there is a failing municipality, the hammer should come down on them to
Yeah.
correct their problems.
Yeah.
You know? Where
Yeah.
this giant umbrella of the federal government, of course, as you say, always screws everything up.
they're
You know,
trying they're trying to appease everybody.
correct.
The state's only worrying about appeasing the state.
Right.
Granted, that's a smaller country, and hopefully you can hear the air quotes when I'm speaking there. They're similar to a country in the fact that they're not going to hit everybody, but they have a better chance of getting most.
Yes, yes. Well, and here you go now when you're talking about that too, and we talk about the money that's spent and just the analogy of the countries. Something that also shocked me is that there's only one nation in the world that spends more money on education than the United States, and that is Luxembourg. Now, I happen to know where Luxembourg is.
I as well.
But I would bet you dollars to donuts, and I know that's an old man thing to say because donuts now cost more than dollars. But I bet there's very, very few, if any, kids graduating high school this year that can tell you where Luxembourg is.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
See, I
know?
was lucky that I started my education early enough in the life of the federal, the National Department of Education, that it hadn't downslid as much as it has gotten to this point. By the
Yeah.
time I was six, by the time it was six, I was six, I was starting school. So there still were foundations that helped me, know where Luxembourg is, for crying out
Yes.
loud.
But here you go again, back to that, what I started to get at here
Yeah, sorry.
is just the
Sidetracked.
massive, no, don't be sorry, the massive amount of money that we spend and the
Yeah.
little product that we get back.
The
I
rate
read
of the rate of return is not good.
exactly. And I read just today, because I wanted to check, that in 2024, the federal budget for the Department of Education was $268.4 billion. dollars. I'm going to repeat that, $268.4 billion. dollars. And even on that little site that I saw, they say that 25% is all that ever gets to see a student. In which case, I would probably bet half of that actually sees a student. Half of that 25%, meaning 12% of the entire budget, actually makes it down to the student level. What do you think of that?
Well, I'm doing the quick math to see. 268.4 times 0.12. See, I learned that in school too. I know how to convert a percentage with,
There you go.
in my head. That's $32 billion that go towards the students.
And we
That
have what,
that's
approximately 50 million students
yeah.
in the school system
I,
nationwide.
I'm not breaking it even down that far. I'm just saying 32 billion of 268 billion is all that goes towards students.
Mhm.
Now, if you break that down, that's not enough. And I'm not when I got into education, I never once thought I'm going to get rich doing this. Excuse me, but it just seems that teachers know that, still go into it for the passion, and we see a ton of teachers leaving because it just seems like the passion's beat out of them. And
Yes.
it's tragic because you have these teachers it's an if anything, teachers should be revered for the fact that they know they're going into a world where they're not going to be appreciated by their students. And honestly, I don't know that if that ever has changed. You're always going to have that, oh, I hate my teacher type thing,
Of course. Of course.
But they're going into a profession with that, and they know they're not going to make squat,
Yeah.
but they still do it. And for you to be able to beat that passion out of somebody is telling of what we've got in the system right now.
Well, that's what's happened. I can relate it to my life in the New York City Police Department,
Mm-hmm.
where in my time it was still a sought after job. Now you can't get people to take the test,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, and through attrition and people not taking the test, of course they've lowered the standards repeatedly, which does nothing but produce a worse police officer,
Right.
regardless for whatever reason why. But sadly now, something that I always thought was a very noble profession, policing and or teaching. Teaching is a very noble profession, very noble profession. However, you're getting, geez, I don't want to say a less qualified teacher. You're getting a less qualified person to go into teaching than you may have 20, 30, 50 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
because it is a bit of a service that you're doing for society to take this test, or rather to take this job. And sadly now, more and more people are saying, why should I?
Yeah.
You know?
I see what teachers go through. I have friends that are teachers. They talk about, all these hoops they've got to go through, and then even then they're
Yeah.
questioned. Or they can't grade a certain way. Oh, excuse me, or whatever it is. And it seems like you would want us teachers to push their students to learn more. And it's not because we know everything, but every profession or every person is you know met with by a teacher to start. A teacher teaches them to love whatever it is that they love,
Oh, absolutely.
and
Yeah.
it makes it awful hard to find, like you said, the type of person that wants to take on that job. It's not, well, I guess I'll become a teacher. It's, I want to become a teacher because I want to touch kids' lives in a way that gives them a passion for the things that we find, and it's kind of disheartening that a watered down version of a teacher, maybe, like they have the knowledge but they don't have the passion. You have to have both to be a really effective teacher, I think.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I agree with you. But it seems again that there's along with the dumbing down of America as a whole, which we've watched over the last 20, 30 years or more.
Yeah.
Okay, the it seems that the school systems are following suit. I mean, and again, I'm not trying to beat up on teachers as
No.
individuals, but the systems themselves are following suit. Where you know granted, everybody always wants more money, but if you're not teaching them the basics, back again to in my time and possibly in yours too, when it simply was reading, writing, and arithmetic, and if
Yep.
you had a good base, a good foundation, You know, if you knew how to read, you could read a newspaper
Right.
and learn about what's going on in the world.
Yep.
You know, and I know newspapers are passé now, but
Or find a
you
job.
exactly, and you could learn everything. But
Yeah.
now they're not giving them. When I see time and time again, fourth graders, eighth graders, 10th graders are reading, 2, 3, 4, 5 years below their grade level,
Mm-hmm.
and somehow are still pushed through the system.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I mean, where do we think that the problem is there? It is, sure, it has to do with teachers, but the teachers would fail them if they could. Is it the schools that force them through? Is it the fear of the parents that force them through? Is it a fear of the local governments that push? Look, we don't want to hold children back. I mean, nobody wants to hold a child back, but if they can't, if they're not smart enough, if they don't have the goods to move forward, what are you doing to society, man?
Yeah, we adopted 4 boys, going on 8 years ago, and well, 7 years is when it officially became the adoption went through. But when we they started living with us, because you got to be a foster parent before you become an adoptive
Yes,
parent. But we were in charge of their education, and we had 4 total boys. 2 of them were going into to 4th grade. Well, both of them had just finished 3rd grade. One going into 2nd grade, and then a 2-year-old. And so what we decided, though, what had happened is the second oldest had been started early, too early, and was struggling. So we
yes,
just, when they moved, we moved them to a new school and just kept the second oldest in 3rd grade again. We explained to him it would separate him from his brother, so it wasn't, oh, you're his brother, or vice versa, or whatever. They have their own class, their own friends, and stuff like that. And there was a year between them, so it makes sense. Um, but that, I mean, teachers, that was a parental decision.
yes,
Teachers have been pretty declawed, I think, because of various things. But I think it's just the cartoon that I saw, probably 3 or 4 years now, even more, before, of the 19. It said, what it was, at 1950s. The teacher and the parent are holding up an F and asking the kid, what is going on here? And he's not afraid, but cowering, like, oh man, I really need to listen, to now. And it's the kid smirking and the 2 parents screaming at the teacher. How
yes,
could you give him this grade?
yeah.
I think, and unfortunately, it's my generation, but I think parents have allowed it to happen
Oh, definitely. Well,
because they push for, uh, you know, well, there's no way little Johnny could have done that. But no, I spend more time with him than you do during the day. Okay. It's not that he's not a good kid, but when he's in class, he's a turd.
yeah,
He doesn't do anything, or he doesn't complete the assignments, or here is his assignment. Take a look at it.
right.
Not being an English teacher, I don't grade on English necessarily unless I can't understand it. So I don't grade much on grammar and stuff like that, even though it's part of my grading. That part's not my concern because I'm not the English teacher. You hit
Yes.
the content, and I'll give you a really, a strong grade. If you're answering the things that are being asked and doing what, perfect.
Hmm.
You'll get a good grade. I once had a conversation. This was when I was in a school. I had a conversation with the assistant superintendent for the school before I'd even taught a day. This was my orientation. And she said that there was no reason a student should ever score lower than a 50%.
Well, how about a
Why?
score? How about a score is a score is a score?
That's, well,
I mean, whatever you score is what it is. If
well,
if
that's
if you
just
and I
it.
are if you and I are playing basketball, you
Hmm.
know,
Oh, I get
and
it.
you score 100 and I score 12, I scored 12.
Well, her argument was, well, you only have 10% window to get an a 10% window to get a B, C, D. You should only have a 10% uh, window to get an F. And I said, but you're missing something.
Yes.
You're saying even if they don't turn it in, you're saying they should get at least a 50. No, it's the 50% they get is the content that they like I had this conversation. We did not agree. She said yes, they should get a 50 before they even before. And then like, then why are we giving grades from that?
Well, it's almost like the everybody gets a trophy kind of deal
Yeah.
in a
So
way.
you're telling me if they submit a paper that says their name, the date's correct, and they put one sentence on there, that's automatically a D, but yet they were supposed to write 5 pages? I don't
Right.
agree with that. I can't agree with that. I just can't. Uh, Same school district, same school year. I had a conversation with the principal because I had a research project I wanted the kids to do, and said after the due date, it's 10% for each day it's late. So if they're willing to take a chance that they've got 100 and they turn it in one day late, they could still get an A.
Yeah.
The teacher then, or the principal, brought me in. He's like, I'm just concerned about this. I said, what about it concerns you? And he says, why are you doing it? I said, to teach responsibility of a deadline.
Absolutely.
And he looked at me and said, you show me a state standard that says you need to teach responsibility, and I'll back you 100%. Until then, you need to take that off.
Wow.
And
Wow.
I that was at the point where I had to question, like, what's my next step here?
Yes.
Um, if I were a teacher with more years, I would have said, nope, it's not happening. You can try to do something about it. I took 10% away total and went from that.
Yeah.
I didn't really announce it to anybody. I just held it at 10%, and that was it. As a late. That didn't come back to bite me, luckily. So I guess I snubbed his nose a little bit, like real quick, and then pulled it back down.
Yes.
But yeah, yeah. As teachers, we're ones that need to help teach that, because when you get into a work world, responsibility and deadlines, they matter.
Well, I think absolutely. I agree with you 100% that absolutely everything should encompass every class. So,
Sure.
like you just mentioned yourself too about how if the English is bad but the answers are correct, it's still correct. But you should, in my opinion, give them a little ding on the
Oh,
language
dude, oh,
too.
I do. My rubric contains, maybe out of 100%, maybe 5% is grammar and that type of thing, to where
Right.
it does matter, but it's not a huge. English is gonna it's gonna be worth like a quarter of your grade, grammar
Right.
and construction. So, yeah, I make it matter. I just don't put the emphasis on that. I
Gotcha.
want content over
Gotcha.
that.
Yeah. So this kind of also answers a little bit of what I had asked before about the money situation, where we are spending such a tremendous amount of money, but again, the education itself may be being held back by the powers that be, the administrators
Yeah,
within the school system, and of course that's in the school itself. But and then of course there's a larger regional situation, and then of course the state situation, you know. And what did I know I had mentioned to you before off air, where there are states like I have it written down here:
Mississippi.
New York,
Oh,
Massachusetts, D.C.,
oh, okay.
California, and Georgia spend the most per student in the country. All right. And yes, to get to Mississippi, where, what was it? Idaho, Utah, South Dakota, Florida, New Hampshire, and Mississippi spend the least. However, the way that they structure their school systems, they all score fairly well as far as education on the, what is the word I want to use, nationwide, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And Mississippi, surprisingly enough, who is the poorest state in the nation, still does fairly well in education and is doing better year after year. Over the last 5 years, they've jumped considerably in education. And I'm curious again, just to see it's not a matter of money, it's a matter of spending. It's not a matter of having the money, rather, but it's a matter of how they spend the money. And where do you think this money could be better spent and or is misspent?
Well, to backtrack just real quick, because I did another step of math real quick.
Yeah.
because we talked about the 268 billion of the federal of the is the
Yes.
budget for the Department of Education at the federal level. We calculated about 32 billion goes to the students, right?
Hmm.
And this is a rough estimate. I'm assuming, and I would assume this, to the student would to me would mean us public school. That
Yes.
money makes it to a public school.
Correct.
Just the quick math, because there's roughly 100,000 public schools in the United States, that equates to $320,000 per school. That's if it's equally
Yes.
divided. So that tells me the federal Department of Education isn't being effective. Where's that money going? I don't know. But you know what? To me, it was not heartbreaking to me to see that the Department of Education is being closed. I don't at the federal level,
Hmm.
because you just put out a list of some schools, and Mississippi's on that list, and you even talked about the fact that they're one of the poorest states in the union, but they have one of the smartest groups of students.
They are
Um,
the poorest state in
yeah,
the.
yeah, and so where could 268 billion dollars go better? Or are you talking about where could money at the
Well, both. I mean, do you have any inkling again from a guy who's actually
yeah.
doing the job? And when I say, you're in the trenches doing it,
Mhm.
do you feel that, where's the short end of the stick as far as the students and the teachers go? And I'm sure that money is like everything is
Mhm.
stolen every step of the way down the ladder. Every
Right.
rung of the ladder, everybody puts a little bit in their pocket on the way
Yeah,
down.
that's that trickle down
Exactly.
effect.
Exactly.
You know what? I'm going to, of course, and people listening, watching, whatever, are going to say, well, of course he's going to say that. You need to pay your teachers more,
Sure.
because then they give a damn, Travis.
Yeah.
Because anymore, I still feel the passion because of the ability to have the job to where I have a little bit of flexibility of when things go on. I can run to the store while I'm working and come back, since it's here in town. I live in a small village in Ohio, which that just means less than 5,000 people. So we have running water and everything. But
Yeah.
but like, I can run to the store. I can go take a lunch with my wife at a local restaurant and still be back within roughly an hour. That flexibility, I love that part of my job. But I also know that I do an awful lot of work that is expected, when I'm sitting here thinking, man, this pay is not
Well, and you
for
have to do a
anything.
lot of work. I can beat up on teachers on this end. Yeah, you get your weekends off, your holidays off, your
Yep.
summers off. However,
Heard
what
it all
people
before.
forget, what people forget though is at the same time, while students are doing homework, teachers are also.
You're correct.
You know, you bring a lot of that work home with you
Mhm.
because you simply can't grade it while you're in class.
Nope.
You can't work on your curriculum while you're in class, and so there are other things that go into it. Um,
It almost, and I'm sorry to step on, interrupt you there, but it
yeah,
almost at some points seemed like that. If the parents, and again, I go back to my generation. It's my generation, so I know we screwed this up. To the where we are now. It took a huge backslide because of my generation. We don't put importance on school. As
yeah,
parents, we don't put importance on school. You need to go to school. You need to be able to learn. You're going to find some passion there.
yeah.
Find it. Start learning about it. That helps you learn in other subjects. That helps you, if you have an affinity for math, and I don't know why you would, but whatever. Uh, but if you, I kid, because my brother-in-law is a math. He's got a master's in math. But point being is he found his passion while he was at school, because he
Mhm.
had parents that said it's important to go to school, go learn something, and
Yes.
you learn to survive life, you
Well,
know
and there is a funny generational thing there too, because I am assuming I am the generation just before yours.
correct. Well, I think my parents and you are, maybe you overlap slightly, but not quite.
Right. I certainly don't have 45-year-old children, but
No, no.
I have a 30-year-old son. You
Yeah,
know,
so you're like on the end of the baby boomer, whatever, because
I
I'm
I am a Gen Xer by 6 weeks. So
And I'm a
that's
Gen Xer by about 3 months
right.
on the other
Exactly.
end.
But what I have seen change over the years was in my time, if you got in trouble at school or worse with the
Oh, it
police,
wasn't good going home.
no, you got in trouble at school or again with the police, you were in double trouble when you got home
Yep.
because my mother would listen to the school teacher, the principal, or the police officer before she ever wanted to hear my side of the
Yes,
story.
sir.
My side of the story didn't count. What happened was you got in trouble and you were wrong for being in trouble.
Your side of the story counted just as long as it ran along with what they said, because if it didn't, you're in
Yeah,
trouble for lying.
exactly. Exactly. So,
Yeah,
you know
and
what?
I'm not saying beat your kids ruthlessly. I'm just, but give them the respect. Like, your teachers should be respected. They know what they're talking about. Uh, are there some that are turds? Right. Yeah, there are some bad actors in the thing that would that give, oh, that dude, I hate that. Yeah, I hate teachers. Well, no, it's just a matter of understanding that you should be able to gauge whether a person knows what they're talking about,
Absolutely.
and understand, or that they really are passionate about it. Be respectful to those. I mean, you should be respectful to anybody older than you anyways, and all people in general, but you know what I mean. You're not going to go, oh, well, roll your eyes at them, but you're just going to be like, okay, I'm going to get through this and respect them enough to get through their class and move on.
Yes, yes. On that note, we're going to take a real quick break now for our sponsors. All right. But then we're going to come right back and continue this conversation and, do a little bit more beating up on the education system. Okay. All right, everybody. We'll be right back. This is a 2024 American Eagle gold coin, which I bought along with several others last year. I'm very happy to report that its value has gone up over 40% in the first year. See, I was encouraged to buy some gold by a financial advisor friend who suggested I be more diversified with my investments. She said gold and silver was a very safe place to park some money, as well as a good hedge against inflation. So I took her advice, and all I can say is I wish I had bought more, as it's been so very, very good to us so far. Now, I purchased these gold coins from the good people over at stackingboise.com, who could not have been nicer, more knowledgeable, or more helpful. Now, I'm certainly no financial expert, but I will say from experience, if you're looking to make an investment, buy yourself some gold. And some real gold that you could hold in your hand, just like this coin you see here. And if you do, then do like I did and get with the good folks over at stackingboise.com. I'm telling you, they're good people, they took good care of me, and they'll take good care of you. Again, that's stackingboise.com. And hey, tell them Travis sent you. Hey, how you doing? Another nobody here, Travis Myers. This one's going out in particular to all my drinking friends out there, because I got a new favorite thing, and it's called Shanky's Whip, and it is magical. It's Irish whiskey mixed with a little caramel, a little cream, a little vanilla, and it's heavenly. What more can I say? I suggest you pick up a bottle. You can have it as a shot with a cold beer, like I like. On the rocks, it's great. Mix it with a little cola. I promise you, you're going to love this stuff. Next time you raise a glass, think of me, another nobody, Travis Myers. Hey, do the right thing. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any more of my nonsense. All the best, my friends.
Buy our books!
Hey there, true crime fans. Let me introduce you today to the Cold Case Initiative. The Cold Case Initiative is a foundation that donates money to smaller police agencies all over the country. It does this in order to offset the costs of scientific, forensic, and DNA testing with the hope of solving cold case homicides and other horrific violent crimes that otherwise would remain unsolved. Please, if you have it in your heart and a little money to spare, go to www coldcaseinitiative.org. Again, that's www.coldcaseinitiative.org, and lend a hand where it truly is needed. Be a part of solving a cold case. Every little bit helps. Know that 100% of the donations that go to the Cold Case Initiative go to agencies that are desperately in need of the help. So please, if you can, do the right thing and make a donation. Thanks, and all the best, my friends. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. I'm here again with my friend Sam Sprunger, and we're talking education today. And yeah, where were we? What were we talking just a minute about? I can't remember, to tell you the truth.
There was
But
a break in there, Travis. Come
there
on.
was a break, and I got confused because we were chatting about other stuff. So, but yeah. So, well, here you go. One of the things that I have a big question about. I don't know if it affects you so much, but I know it does as a whole, is the power of the unions. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I know unions, not even so much teachers unions, which I think the teachers union might be the largest in the nation, if I'm not mistaken. It's very, very big. Um,
Very cool.
but
Oh,
not
could
only
be.
teachers union, but all unions as a whole, quite often, and it's their job to, look out for the teachers, or rather look out, for their members, as opposed to actually taking care of the job at hand. And I've seen this on construction sites where guys, we used to call them company killers, literally were just useless, but they couldn't get fired off the jobs unless they did something egregious and or dangerous. They wouldn't get
Right.
fired. Now, when I talk about education here in New York City, which is a giant, giant school system, as you can imagine,
Yeah.
we have a thing called rubber rooms. Okay, and you can look this up. Please, listeners, look this up. New York City Board of Education rubber rooms. And what happens is there are teachers who most likely should be fired, teachers who have gotten in trouble for any number of things, but not quite enough to get fired, and the unions stand behind them. They go to work every day and they sit in a room where they listen to the radio and read the newspaper for 8 hours and then go home. And they can keep a job like that for years, if not decades, which is absolutely insane to me. Um, Now, I'm sure that doesn't happen where you are
Does
because
that
you
still
work.
exist?
It still exists. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Because the unions will not, the unions will go to bat to them, and the city simply can't afford to you know, to fight the fight to get rid of these teachers.
I don't understand the reasoning behind the union saying, like you can't fire them.
I don't either. I've never understood that with any union, and that includes, like I say, construction work, construction unions that I've been in, and even the police department.
Yeah.
You have unions to help protect you, but if somebody needs the boot, they need the boot. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and now, sadly, and we can get into this. I don't know. I don't even think I don't even know if that was a question or me just ranting, but
Well, I can answer, my thoughts. I was when I was when I was in brick and mortar before the job that I have, because right now I work for a company that is not a school district. It's an educational software and stuff like that. So I mean, we're with a bunch of states. We're in every state in the union, plus many. I teach a lot of international students as well.
mm,
Um, for various countries, but uh I don't work for a school district, so we don't have a union. I have a 401k instead of a teacher's retirement plan
right.
at the place that I work. But before that I was part of the union, and people were like, why would you pay the union? You get all the benefits of the union without being part of it. I said, it's the principle of it all. If I'm going to have them go to bat for me, I should have some skin in the
Oh,
game, you
absolutely.
know and I only had to use the union once, maybe twice in the time that I was in brick and mortar schools, and it was for nothing major. But honestly, I felt it was the responsible thing to do, but at the same time I didn't understand what they really did for me,
Yes.
because it sure didn't seem like they were doing much. We'd get the newsletter, or we'd have an in-school meeting, uh, but in the state of Indiana, at least, if less than half of your teachers are uh, not part of the union, then the union can't negotiate the contract either.
Right.
And the school we were in, we only had about 40% of the teachers in the union, so it didn't even matter for pay. Like they would save our jobs, but honestly, if somebody was a dirtbag enough that they needed to be fired for whatever reason, and I say dirtbag in assuming that it had something unseemly or not nice happening, but if somebody needs to be fired, even if it's verbally assaulting somebody, they should be fired. You know what I mean? Do you really want to come back to the school that you just had that incident happen and stay teaching there?
Mm-hmm.
No. Move on. Go elsewhere. Go do something else. So honestly, when it comes to union, there wasn't the good did not outweigh the what are they wasting my money for.
Right. Right. And again, I'm not beating up on unions, but I don't understand how failing teachers and administrators again, uh,
Correct.
if your school is not up to par, how is it not fixable? And then
Mhm.
we have so many different problems. Again, it seems to me quite often. I was watching. Oh, geez, I don't know what I saw on TV. It was the NEA, which is a National Educational Association,
Educators
right?
Association.
And
Yep.
then there's the AFT, which I have here, the American Foundation of Teachers. Those are our two largest, possibly the only two unions. I don't know, but they're the two largest either way. And they were talking at one of their big yearly get together rally type things. And the point that was made by the person who was reporting on it is that they never once mentioned students. It turned out that, again, it was over and over and over, um, about silly things, silly political things like equity, diversity, things like this. Well, the whole DEI package
Yeah.
basically is what they kept talking, as opposed to the well-being of the teachers and, more importantly, the well-being of the students. Is it possible now? Well, I don't think it's possible. I just want to get your take on it. That these unions as a whole have become, so much more ideological. You know,
They're politically driven, Travis.
what's that?
They're politically driven.
Yes. Yeah, well, that's exactly my point. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to say they're absolutely politically driven. I mean, it's um, to me, and it only makes sense. You want the absolute best to be what you
Yes.
represent.
Yes.
You want the best police officers. You want the best teachers. You want the best, whatever it is that there's a union, steel workers, the best qualified steel, because then you have less to do
Yes.
because they're the best. They're going to make things happen. Um, Travis, and this is the way I've grown up, call it because I'm a hayseed, grew up in the middle of cornfields in Indiana or whatever. The best doesn't have a color, nationality, or a gender built into it, period.
I agree.
If you're the best, you're the best. It doesn't matter, it doesn't matter, period. And so I'm not a fan of DEI because those are measures that automatically dis and yes, it's somebody that looks like me, white, male, it undercuts what I can do almost. And I'm not crying poor me, but if I'm one of the best, I should have that opportunity just the same as anybody next to me, no matter their
Yes.
color, nationality, or their gender.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. So
I am a firm believer in equality, not necessarily equity.
well,
Everybody should have
no,
the equal
everybody should have an
resources to
equal
be able
shot.
equal shot, not well, we're going to disable their shot a little bit to make these other groups more likely to succeed. That's what equity is.
Yes.
And everybody has the equal opportunity.
Well, no, and so quite often with things like this, and before the DEI thing, it was affirmative action. There's
Correct.
so many different things where they try to make things happen, and it's not that they're necessarily evil when they come up with these ideas. They're doing it because they think it's going to be good. They think it's going to work, but again, you end up with a worse product in the end. And now, in my time, I had, granted, I lived in New York City, but as young as I can remember, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, I always had teachers from all kinds of backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
white teachers, Jewish teachers, black teachers, Chinese. I had Mrs. Lai was one of my favorite teachers. She was a Chinese teacher. You know, we had all kinds of different backgrounds, which was great, but that wasn't the important part. The important part was that they taught you how to read, how to do math, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
And now I just feel that we're lacking there in a big, big way. Obviously, we are because our numbers are constantly slipping.
Yep.
And back to what you had mentioned before too, about the pay problem or teachers not being paid enough. I had seen something. I don't know if it had gone all the way through or not. I was reading. I want to say it was Oklahoma, but it could have been Nebraska, where they were looking to go to a 4-day work week for school teachers because they simply couldn't pay them enough. And so instead of giving them more money, they'd give them the same money, but make them work less. Now here you have a situation.
That's a raise, by the way.
Well, in
That's
their
an
mind,
absolute raise.
well, in their mind, it is. It actually isn't. In that,
No, I get that part, but yeah,
you're making the same amount of money, okay, and the kids are being taught less. Again, they're being taught less, and it's just insanity to me that we can't have a solid. And again, this has to be done at the state level and the local
Right.
level. A solid way to hire the best teachers possible, and then to pay them a living wage. Please go ahead.
I was just going to say the one thing that I will put that caveat on. You're saying they're working less. It depends on the state, but many states go by amount of minutes that kids are in class. Right now, like the school my kids go to, they go 8 to 10 days more than days worth of minutes more than they actually need to, according to the state of Ohio. And what I've always said is
That comes
anybody
at
that
the end
goes
of the year, they're doing an extra 10 days than the average.
right.
Going.
What I'm saying, what I've always been an advocate for is if your state goes by minutes to incentivize to get some teachers, go to a 4-day school week. Because if you're still and make the days maybe half an hour to 45 minutes longer each day. So the kids go from like 8:30 to maybe 3:45 rather than 3 every day, Monday through Thursday, or Tuesday through Friday, whichever a district wants to do it. They would get the equal amount of minutes that they need to be considered as an adequately taught according to the state. And you have teachers that are like, yeah, I get a 3-day weekend every weekend.
Yeah. Well, I'll push back on that a little bit, though, because what about now a child's attention span? Because again, here, let's get back to the kids. They got to learn.
Yeah,
okay.
sure.
Not only a attention span, but a rigorous, structured lifestyle. Okay.
I've actually thought about this, so it's good that you bring this up.
If you give them more hours in a day, will they not learn less because now they're, they can only fit so many things in their brain that day? Okay, I mean, I've even read things too where the second half of the day you learn a lot less than you do the first half of the day. It's just human nature. You know, you're us as workers, when we go to work, after lunch, everything goes to shit. The first half of the day is where you get stuff done. So I would argue, and again, being uneducated on the subject, that the 4-day school week, and work week for teachers would do less good for students, even if it is nice for the teacher to have the extra day off.
I was going by the teacher's response. For the kids, honestly, they might be able to get through school quicker. Travis, let me paint this out, because like I said, I'm glad you asked this, because I've actually thought about this. Is give them one more class to where maybe they've got gym, but they have also one other class, one of their electives, or if they did well the first semester in math, you can bump them up to where they have a little bit, better, but you add one more period during the day. So that's going off the idea that kids go through 7 periods a day, roughly thereabouts. That includes lunch. That includes, any activity period that allows the groups to meet and stuff like that. They go about 7 periods a day at about roughly 50 minutes. So if you're adding 45 minutes, you can finagle it to where each class is maybe 49 minutes, and they get one extra class, a grading period. So in theory, if you have, let's say, 12 semester classes, you could get 2 knocked out per semester rather than just the one, because you've added a little bit of time. They may acquire their credits to graduate a little sooner than what they would have with just the traditional day that they have now.
But my point now, though, okay, and I'm going to again push back on you,
Yeah,
is
sure.
that is if yes, they may get the credits for the classes,
Mhm.
but are they learning still? Are they learning more?
That's
Are they
where it
learning
falls
better?
back on the teacher,
Right.
because you have to have quality teachers in order to have that class matter, if that
Right.
makes sense. That they have the proper uh guidance from the people that should be the experts,
Mhm.
not just a guy that's a babysitter or a gal. I say guy because I am one. That's why I
Yes.
just say a guy who
I
doesn't
mean, it's
care.
funny that you mentioned that. Two things that you mentioned that I'll bring up,
Yeah.
and hopefully I won't forget. One is the guy thing, and the
Yeah.
other is you mentioned Jim just a second ago. So
Yeah.
the guy thing is, I was also surprised now that there are very, very few men, percentage wise,
Hmm.
teaching anymore. It's something ridiculous, like, I don't know, 15% of teachers are now men, where in my time, I would say there was at least a third of my personal
Yeah.
teachers were men, about a third. And the funny thing with that too is not only were they men, many of them were veterans. I mean, they were, I don't want to say true men. Here's the bunny ear thing,
Yeah.
but they
Yeah.
were they were a very good, in my mind. Like I can remember Mr. Bookus from when I was in junior high school. You know, he was somebody to look up to, and I
Hmm.
loved that. I
Yep.
remember him fondly to this day. He took control of his classroom, and not, I say it now as a 60-year-old man, not as a 12, 14-year-old kid. But he ruled that classroom. He came in, he was a social studies teacher, he was a no-nonsense guy, he had a good sense of humor, and
Yeah.
everybody really liked and respected him. And today, I think it's probably a sad thing that especially boys, but girls also, don't have more men to look up to while
Hmm.
they're going to school. Because people
Well,
do look up to their teachers. They do.
oh, for sure. There are multiple teachers that were men, and don't get me wrong, I was influenced by teachers that were women as well, but there were a lot of influential male teachers that I had during my process, and that includes from late elementary all the way through early college, or actually through my undergrad.
Mhm.
Now, I did my master's through WGU, which is completely online, which is Western Governors University. It's a well-known university now, but it's all virtual, so it's all online. But all the way through my undergrad, I had guys that were male teachers and professors that really influenced where I am today.
Yes.
And I had a father that loved me as well. So it's not
Yes.
like I was, and I'm not, I say that in kind of jest, but at the same time, there are some people that don't have a father at home,
Of
that they
course.
rely on those, subconsciously rely on those males to be an influence in their life.
Sure. So I guess my statement slash question, which you kind of agree with, but is that what do we do? I mean, I think we need more men in teaching.
Sure.
Okay. And what do we do about that? Why are they falling out simply because they can't make money there? Or is it
No,
more that it's just not attractive to men, or have women just completely taken over?
let's ask you, what type of personality are you, Travis? Do you like having, basically beating your head against a wall and getting nowhere, or saying, I'm done with this, I'm going to go do something that I can find what I'm able to do? Men normally are the type that will walk away.
Yes.
Women
They're
are a little more
more
patient.
pragmatic. Yeah.
Yep, women are more patient, more, I think we can change it from, if it would change just to this, not saying that there aren't women walking away from teaching, they're more tolerant and they stick around a little longer. And so I think, and it may be cyclical. I haven't looked at the data there. It might be cyclical that in another 10 years more men will come back.
Hmm.
But it just seems to me that it's getting fewer and far between. It all depends on the department now. You mentioned one of your most influential teachers was a history teacher. That's where most men now
Most men land, yes.
reside in schools now. I'm not saying it's the only place. I'm not saying there's not English teachers that are men, not math teachers. None of they all have them,
Yeah,
but men are more dominant in the social studies.
yes. Well, as
Maybe science
so
too, but
remembering back, yes, I had, my social studies teachers. I think they were all men.
mhm,
Um, Science teacher was a male. Math teacher was a male. Our hygiene teacher, because we didn't have sex education at my time, it was called
right,
hygiene, and he was a male. And of
right.
course, gym teachers too. There were female gym teachers, but they
They
were
did the girls. Yeah.
exactly.
Yep. They
And that's
taught the
what I wanted to
girls.
bring up too was gym. Gym now, even in my kids' time, now we education was a big reason that we no longer live in New York City.
Mhm.
When I was still on the job at the time, of course, my wife still worked in the city at the time, but when my daughter was born, my youngest, my second child, we decided we could not afford to go to private school, and we did not want to go to public school. Both myself and my wife both went to public school, and we said this is not for our kids. And I think that's a big thing with urban families where they literally run from where they live to, you know, find if they don't buy a home, they rent a home, they rent an apartment wherever
Right.
else to get their kids a better life. And I
Right.
respect that 100%. But even in my kids' time, although, both, well, my son was an athlete, my daughter kind of pretended to be an athlete. All right. But I remember when I was a kid, we still had pegboards. You know what a pegboard is?
Mhm. Yep.
And we still, for people that don't know, a pegboard is you take these little wooden dowels and you climb a wall with what is
Mhm.
very hard to do.
Oh, it was impossible.
Yeah, we used to
Almost.
have to climb a rope. You had to climb a rope. And then we had all kinds of games that we had. And none of that is done anymore. There's no focus on true physical fitness in gym.
Right.
You know, it's mostly just like a game playing thing. And it was even for my children, where again, yes, they went to gym to be physically fit, but if you didn't play sports, if you didn't take on a team activity, you weren't getting physically fit going to public
Oh,
school. It just
yeah.
wasn't. It was over, you know.
Mhm.
And what are your thoughts on that?
I We got to get back to getting off. Technology is great. It has also made our society extremely lazy. This guy included.
Yes,
In some aspects, but I still have that. Uh, you and I've got the pleasure of being in that generation where we grew up without it, and now we have it, and it's great. But you
yes.
still have the values of what it was before all this stuff was there. Um, Technology is one that has gotten us very lazy. Start using that technology to get people active. I know they try with the Wii and stuff like, no, actually make them go through something that they're interacting. I know you don't play golf, Travis, but
I know.
the virtual golf where you hit the ball into the
Yes,
big screen. You could do that with tennis using a full size tennis ball or a tennis racket or
yes.
whatever, and really get those types of things. If you're going to have the technology, why not use it to your advantage to make a more healthy society of children?
I have seen in other countries, and I always wondered this myself, and even wondered why they didn't do it at my age when physical fitness was more of a class that you actually
Right.
took. Is why they don't do something more, shall I say, militaristic? I mean, I
Yeah.
see the kids in Japan or Korea or China, especially in Asia, where they
Right.
actually get out and they do their push-ups, their sit-ups, their runs. They might do some kind of Tai Chi kind of karate thing, but they do it as the entire class. And usually it's the first thing in the morning to get your blood going.
Oh yeah.
And why? I mean, I can only imagine it would be for litigious reasons that people are afraid to implement these things. But why don't they implement them in American schools where, look, you have to do this. You have to be able to do as a young man, depending on your age, at this grade you have to be able to do 10 push-ups. At this grade you have to be able to do 15. By the time you graduate high school, you have to be able to do the Cooper, maybe not the Cooper standard, which is what they do for policemen and firemen to be tested in, you
Right.
know, but something that's worthwhile so these kids are healthy. I mean, obesity is a giant problem in this country,
Hmm.
and it doesn't quite often it does start after we leave school. But today, so many kids in grade school. I
Yeah.
mean, how in the world can you be in junior high school and be suffering from diabetes? It's
Yeah.
insane to me.
And not have it be type 1. You're
No,
suffering
no,
from
that's what I'm
type
saying.
2
Yes.
diabetes.
No, it
Yes.
is insane to me.
Yeah.
Insane. And I don't know why that's not implemented. Do you have any input on something like that?
I've asked questions to superintendents, and I've asked them here, luckily in the rural areas, you hold on to some of those things. They're like gym classes here. I have a nephew that is an elementary gym teacher in Indiana in a major metropolitan area. He talks about things that he does, but he says there's so many things we're told we can't do either. We just can't.
Right.
And I'm like, and so things he can't do, gym teachers here can, a little bit more freely. But I don't. I've asked that, what can we do to try to, in the to help our kids? And the biggest thing that I've found from a lot of superintendents is get them into an extracurricular,
Yeah. Well,
even if it's not with the school.
again, it's a funny thing. I certainly don't like. I believe in freedom. I don't like any sort of socialism nonsense
Sure.
whatsoever.
No.
However, what people don't realize, okay, is that a public school system is by design a socialist setup. You know what I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying? It is. That's
Yep.
just by design. It is, and it's not a bad thing.
Everybody has to do this.
Exactly. And what do you call it? And everybody has to pay into it, even if you're not going to that school.
Right.
But
Correct. Yes.
again, how we fail our kids by not taking care of them, and physical fitness is something that should be at the top of the list,
Well,
you
for
know.
sure.
And I know we can talk about diet and go on about that.
Saying diet is something that should be worked on is not wrong. It should be.
A simple 20-minute workout for all kids, first thing in the morning, would do wonders. Would do wonders. It really, really would.
Yeah. So I mean, it's a. I don't know that it will be, unfortunately, ever cured, Travis. I really don't know. I'd love to think that we'll figure it out sometime, but
Yeah.
we've let it slide so far away from what the standard was that, I mean, the standards this, and now and rightfully so, but now it's up to the state to decide the standards.
Correct.
And I'm not upset with that. Don't get me wrong, but we've let it slide away. These people, parents, because I'm one of them too, have been used to a system a certain way. There's going to be blowback. There's going to be a fight. There's going to be all sorts of hell raising because this isn't what we're used to. This isn't what the standard has been. And now you're moving the standard. There's always going to be that, but we need to do something to change that standard.
I've seen that so many, many times with, I was in the bar business for a long time, so I know so many, many people. I
Right.
overhear so many conversations, even if
You've heard all sorts of conversations, my
even if I'm
friend.
not involved with myself. And of course, I've even sadly had family members who have the same attitude, where it's the teacher's responsibility to teach my kids. Where
It's partnership.
yes, the teachers are giving the education. However, if your kids aren't learning, it is your responsibility to make sure that they learn.
More times than not.
Yes,
More times
yes.
than not, it's the
No,
parents' responsibility there.
having a bad teacher, it's your responsibility to get them out of that school system.
No,
Or,
yeah.
do something, with the administration. Again, I hate to get back to the litigious thing or whatever, but straighten the teacher out. Make sure these kids are learning, and
Yeah.
if not, go somewhere else, man.
Yep.
Because the kids only have the one chance to learn, and once you're behind, as a guy that's been behind a lot of his life for
Yeah.
not being educated, it's really, really important.
Oh yeah, I absolutely. I have, like I had said, we adopted 4 boys, and we're dealing with 3 of them right now. Well, and all 5 of my children.
I don't want to interrupt you either, but
No,
I
you're fine.
I forgot. I'd like to thank you for that, because so
Oh, no
many, many,
problem.
many kids have no place to go.
Yeah.
And it's a really admirable and noble thing what you and your wife are doing. So I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, no, I appreciate that. That's not why we did it, but it always is nice to know that people
Well, that people
see
understand.
people recognize it. At the same time. Um, but even with my son that we had before we adopted, and then the four new, all of them except the youngest, and it's just because he hasn't gotten there yet, has given up or has given the blowback of, why do I need this?
Yes.
I don't need good grades. I don't. So and so's parents don't make it. Don't care.
Yeah.
I'm
Yes.
I'm because we're the parents and we know the importance of your early childhood education and your secondary, which is your high school. You should have a good stable background, and Travis, I you didn't finish school, but you know what, you are the exception, not the rule, because many times when people don't get educated, they don't grasp and say, you know what, I need to learn things on my own, you know
Well, luckily, I'm lucky in a couple of ways. One, I'm naturally built that I have a lust for knowledge and I want to
right,
learn things, you know.
right,
But more than that, I also had a mother who I remember reading with my mother. She would force me to read on the couch and
yep,
sitting with me, and
yep,
she taught me how to read. I have what is that nonsense? Dyslexia, you
yeah,
know, and I was dyslexic. And back then, it was a not I don't want to say popular, not as well known a subject as it is today, and there wasn't a lot of help. And I remember my third grade teacher, Mrs. Pondman, who I still remember her name today. She was a lovely, lovely woman. And she was the one who realized, look, this kid is bright. There's a problem here. And they did a bunch of testing on me and they decided that, I was dyslexic. And we actually moved all the way up to about 80 blocks north so that I could go to a different school. Because they had a program
they
for
had a program
dyslexia,
for it.
which my school did not have.
Yeah,
Okay. And
yeah.
so did that help me? I imagine it certainly did. I still hated every day of school I ever went. But it was my mother who would sit me down and
Yeah.
force me to read and read and read. And eventually I was able to overcome it, you know?
Well, I've told all my boys, and my oldest all the way down to my youngest, that my wife, all of them, including my oldest, who is not hers from that's her stepchild, and then our four boys, she requires them to read all summer,
Yeah.
and then also to read each night. Try to read some each night. She physically read with my oldest and our current and our youngest is still doing it now, but I always, and some may seem like it's something that maybe I'm a jerk about, but I'll correct their grammar in front right there.
Nothing wrong with that.
And they've asked me, and in a respectful way, they asked, why do you always do that? And it's
Mhm.
because I told them, I said, it's because if you know how to speak properly, you'll automatically be taken serious compared
Yes.
to somebody that comes in stumbling.
Yes.
It's and it's not a I'm smarter than you. It's just, you know how to articulate your feelings rather than trying to stumble over it. And well, I stumble over my words, but I enunciate well. I make sure to speak. Yeah, I've got a loud voice, but I speak loud enough where people can hear me, but don't think I'm yelling,
Yes. Yes.
you know, and so it grabs attention. But yet I'm not educated enough. I'm articulate enough that I can get my feelings across, and people know exactly where I stand on
So there's
things.
two things that we were very big on with our kids. And one was, of course, the education during summer. We used to get them, go to Barnes and Noble and all these little workbooks,
Oh, and the
writing,
book
math,
clubs at Barnes
everything.
and Noble is amazing.
And my daughter actually loved them. My son, of course, hated them,
Yep,
but we made them do it. You had to
boys are
do,
wired differently.
yep, we had to do these, whatever it was, 3, 4, 5 pages a day, all
Yep,
the way through the summer. That was it. I don't care if it's not fun, it's going to make you smart. The other thing was manners, you know,
yep,
and we were
absolutely.
really big on that. And something that gets me again down with the schools today is I always made sure. In fact, my son sometimes would not fight me on it a little bit, but he would always kind of give me the kind of
Yeah,
exasperated. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. And not to me, to everybody out there in the world. Okay? Because again, you're if you have good manners and you present yourself properly, all right, regardless of what your accent may be or the fact that we can all tell, you look at somebody, they can be higher class, lower class, whatever it is.
sure.
If they are polite, if they
Doesn't matter.
shake your hand, if they make eye contact, if they say the simple things like, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, no, sir, no, ma'am, things like this, they will automatically, I don't care if they're 5 or they're 50, they will be treated with respect.
Yep.
And
Yep.
once you drill that into them enough times, they do. And now you see these schools all over the country where the kids call their teachers by their first names. That blows my mind. They didn't do it in my schools where my kids went to school. Luckily, they didn't. You were Mr. Whatever or Mrs. or Miss, whatever it was. But I've seen it. I've seen it time and time again. And I think you're really doing the kids a disservice. I really do.
I the kids that live at home right now, they'll occasionally be telling us how things are going at school or whatever, and they'll say, Jim. Wait, I thought we were talking about Mr. So-and-so. Yeah, he told us we can call him Jim. I said, you cannot.
No.
I said, whether they seem to make it seem like they're at a higher level than you.
Absolutely.
I said, so you need to respect them by calling them Mr. or Mrs. or Ms., whatever their preferred way of being addressed, if it's Ms. or Mrs., whatever. I said, the worst case scenario, you only call them by their last name, but even then, I don't like that.
No.
But at the very least, they're not your friend.
No.
Even if they're friendly.
Yes. I agree.
Yeah, that drives me insane. And there are some universities that, I've talked to people that they get emails saying that you cannot require them to call you Professor so-and-so. It's if they want to call you by your first name, they are allowed to do so. And I'm like, no, thanks.
No, I don't think you're not. Again, back to structure.
Yeah.
There is a structure. There is a protocol that everybody should go through.
Yep.
And it does not mean that anybody's holding you down,
and you're not subservient to them.
Not at all. Not at all. No.
You just understand that's a level of respect, and you should always respect those people that have knowledge to share with you. Period.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
Always. Yep. Always.
Absolutely. So, well, my friend, I don't know. I don't think we've solved any problems here.
No, but we've at least put our words into the air, right?
Yes.
There's a lot to be done, and you can't solve it all over. What's the saying? Rome wasn't built in a day.
Correct.
It's pretty simple. It takes time, but it has to start somewhere. And I think, at least from this point of us recording, I would say it's potentially starting that way. I really do think the federal level Department of Education needed to be gone.
Yes,
I really do. Because then it puts it back in the hands of the states, where it was intended to be. Our founding fathers weren't complete morons. They did understand that the possibility of the expansive mass of what this country could be. They knew there was something beyond where they'd already established. So how far did it go? And it was already big in their eyes then. Yes. So put it in the hands, and the climates warrant different types of living. So, you know what? At school here in Ohio and in Indiana, you get 6 inches of snow, you might get a delay. Well, back in my day, you get a foot, you might get a delay.
Yep.
But you're still going to school.
Yes.
Now that the night before they say we could get 2 inches, they put at least a delay out to see if we got it.
Yep. That happens here with us too. When my kids were in high school and junior high school,
but you go to Tennessee,
I couldn't believe that they were calling the day for snow.
Right, but you go to Tennessee, they get half an inch of snow. They've canceled for the day, and maybe depending on how warm it gets, they may cancel the next day.
Yeah,
because they just they understood. Our founding fathers understood that there were different needs in different places.
Correct.
So that's why it was the education part of the government was automatically said to be the states, because they know what their people need.
Yes.
So that's my end of my rant, Travis.
All right, my friend. Well, it wasn't much of a rant. You weren't ranting. You were hitting the nail right on the head.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for coming to sitting with me, Sam. I really enjoyed talking to you again.
Yeah, I appreciate it greatly.
All right. Well, if that's it, we're going to say goodbye. All right?
All
Until
right.
next time, my friends, my friend Sam Sprunger here. Good to see you, my friend.
Yes.
All the best.
Bye, everybody.
All right, everybody. There you have it. Mr. Sam Sprunger. Real decent guy. You can catch him on his podcast, The 500 Section Lounge, where yours truly, me, has been a guest several times. And for all you Purdue basketball fans out there, please check him out on his other podcast, The Boilermaker Lounge. Now, for all things Travis Myers and Another Nobody, please check me out on the YouTube on the For Boston's Media channel. And before you go, please do the right thing. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and we'll talk again next week. All the best, my friends. You are. Hey, how you doing? It's me again, Another Nobody, Travis Myers. And today we're going to talk whiskey. I know most of you think of me as an all-American patriotic type guy, and you are right. But when it comes to whiskey and drinking whiskey, which I do, I always go for the Irish stuff. And my choice when it comes to the Irish stuff is Powers Irish Whiskey. Established back in 1791. It's a triple distilled, oak-aged whiskey. Powers is simply magic. It also happens to be the #1 selling whiskey in Ireland, which has got to say something, because if it's good enough for the Irish, it's good enough for you. So the next time you raise a glass, fill it with Powers, and think of me, Another Nobody, Travis Myers. Listen up, this one's important. As a rule, I never stump for charities, because most of them don't hand out as much money as they collect. And that's a sad fact. But not Tunnel to Towers. These guys do the right thing. They have an A+ rating from Charity Watch and a 4-star rating from Charity Navigator. That's like the #1 charity watchdog group, with over 93% going towards the families of veterans and first responders who have lost their lives in the line of duty. For only $11 a month, and it's easy. Just go to t2t.org. That's letter T, number 2, letter T.org, and hit the donate button. Do the right thing and do good for the families and the veterans and the first responders who do good by you. It's only $11 a month. Thanks, and all the best.